The trade war between the US and China might be coming back, and this time it could hit harder than ever. In this video, we'll break down Trump's new 100% tariff threat, China's response with rare earth export limits, and what it all means for prices, jobs, and global trade. You'll see how both sides are raising the stakes once again. Stay till the end to find out who's really got the upper hand and how this trade fight could affect your wallet next. The US has often used tariffs and trade rules to try to change China's behavior. A tariff is like a tax when one country buys things from another. Over the years, the US has placed many tariffs and restrictions on Chinese goods, especially on high-tech items. For example, in recent years, the US restricted China's access to advanced semiconductor technology. These are the special computer chips used in things like phones and satellites. Also, the US has banned or limited the sale of certain tools and machinery to China, especially those connected to military or dual-use purposes. These moves built up tension. The US has claimed China unfairly subsidizes its industries, steals intellectual property, or uses trade for strategic advantage. China has often pushed back, saying the US is being hypocritical or abusing national security. So, when Donald Trump threatened a new 100% tariff, it felt like a return to a bigger fight. Before Trump's threat, China made a move of its own. On October 9th, China announced new rules that control how many rare earth minerals it can send out. Rare earths are special metals used in things like electric cars, rockets, cell phones, and many high-tech and defense products. China already dominates much of the world's rare earth supply. China said its new export controls would cover 12 out of 17 kinds of those metals, plus the equipment used to refine them. From December 1st, companies would need permission from Beijing to export products containing Chinese rare earths. They must also explain how the metals will be used. Beijing argues that the restrictions are about national security. They said that because rare earths are crucial for advanced technology and defense, they cannot freely export them if they think their security is at risk. China also claimed that its move was partly a reaction to US trade pressure. Chinese officials said that Washington had already hit Chinese entities with export controls and was targeting Chinese maritime, logistics, and shipbuilding industries. They said China's steps were to defend its interests and restore balance. Because so much of rare earth processing happens in China, the move gave Beijing a strong lever in the trade fight. Almost immediately, Trump fired back. On October 10th, he announced that the US would impose a 100% tariff on Chinese goods, starting November 1st or before. He said it would be in addition to whatever tariffs China was already paying. He also threatened export controls on any and all critical software. In other words, he said the US might block China from getting important computer programs. Trump described China's export curbs on rare earths as unprecedented and said that because China took that step, the US had no choice. He warned that the new tariffs may be implemented even earlier than November 1st. Before that, he had already been calling China trade hostile and even floated canceling his upcoming meeting with Xi Jinping, the Chinese leader. But whether that meeting will still happen is unclear. The US Vice President, J.D. Vance, said that the US has a lot of leverage, and their hope was that they would not have to use all of it. China did not remain silent. According to its Ministry of Commerce, China calls the US retaliation a double standard. They said that the US was stretching the idea of national security, abusing export control tools, and using discriminatory practices against Chinese firms. China said it did not want to escalate conflict, but it also threatened to respond with its own measures if the US proceeded. The Commerce Ministry warned that China would resolutely protect its legitimate rights and interests. China's officials also pointed out that both countries have broadened their definitions of national security to include economic and technological matters. The argument is that trade now intertwines deeply with security. China said it would fight to the end if the US tried to hurt the world economy or coerce China. Meanwhile, China defended its rare earth export controls, saying they were not total bans. They promised that exports for civilian use that comply with regulations would still be allowed under license. In recent years, China has often responded to US tariff hikes with its own measures. For instance, earlier in 2025, China imposed a 34% tariff on U.S. goods in retaliation. When the U.S. accused China of trying to damage the world economy, China hit back. The Commerce Ministry called the U.S. threats a form of intimidation and urged the U.S. to retract its practices. China warned again that it would take resolute measures if its interests were harmed. Its tone suggested that it would not back down easily. Still, China has been cautious. It has not yet slapped sweeping new tariffs on U.S. goods tied to this recent flare-up. Instead, it is using non-tariff tools, export controls, regulatory moves, and signals to respond while keeping diplomatic space open. Before Trump's new threat, many in business hoped the worst was behind them. Earlier in 2025, after aggressive tariff hikes, both countries had lowered rates from triple digits to more moderate levels, around 30% in some cases. The easing had given retailers some breathing room. But the 100% tariff threat shattered that hope. Retailers now face enormous risk. A jump from 30% to an additional 100% means their costs could more than triple, forcing them to raise prices or absorb losses. Many retailers began warning that holiday season sales could suffer, that supply chains cannot adjust in weeks, and that consumers would feel the pinch. Markets reacted with fear. Stock prices tumbled after Trump's announcement. Investors scrambled. Companies that import from China, electronics, apparel, toys, home goods, face huge cost shocks. Some may shift sourcing to other countries, but that takes time and investment. Consumers worry that goods will cost more and that choices will shrink. The unpredictability of trade policy means planning becomes very hard for businesses big and small. Retailers are likely to be hurt badly. Many already operate on thin profit margins. If tariffs spike, they might not be able to absorb the extra cost. Surveys suggest that businesses are delaying new investments, hiring freezes, or cutting jobs just to manage uncertainty. If consumer demand weakens under inflation, the problems will deepen. Holiday retailers fear that shoppers will cut back when prices rise. Promotions and discounts may vanish. Some sectors, electronics, toys, small appliances, are especially vulnerable because many parts come from China. Though the story is global, it touches places like Wisconsin. Why? Because U.S. states also rely on trade and manufacturing. For example, American soybean farmers, including in Wisconsin, suffered when China all but stopped buying U.S. soybeans, moving purchases to Brazil and Argentina instead. Trump's mention of cutting cooking oil trade with China is also aimed to show farmers that he is pushing back. Wisconsin's manufacturers might face lost markets or higher input costs if China retaliates. Some export industries could be squeezed. If the tariffs cause inflation in U.S. or weaker growth, local economies everywhere could feel the ripple. As if tariffs and rare earths weren't enough, Trump added another target: cooking oil. He floated ending trade with China over cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution for China cutting purchases of U.S. soybeans. In 2024, China was a big supplier of used cooking oil to the U.S., a niche market tied to biofuels and industrial uses. But since then, those exports from China have plunged, down about 65% year-to-date, after U.S. restrictions and changes in Chinese tax rebates. Analysts say this move may be more symbolic than economically impactful now. The trade in cooking oil is small compared to other sectors, but targeting it sends a broader signal that no sector is off limits in this war. The US and China trade war is heating up, and what happens next could reshape global markets.